This episode of the Oh No 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 podcast is sponsored by Dynamic Industrial Services, the rope access specialists. Every week we talk about the Rovers' latest attempts to climb the SPFL ladder, but sometimes even a ladder won't reach. DIS are specialists in working at height, offering maintenance, inspection, repair and more, right across Scotland. So if you need a rope access specialist and you want a Premiership service, visit dynamicindustrialservices.co.uk to find out more.
As the noted philosopher John Francis Bon Jovi Jr. once said, "Whoa, we're halfway there." The Rovers trooped through to Firhill in numbers and in full confidence last night, and were rewarded with a performance that was, at times, as good as anything we've seen this season. Scott Brown and Lewis Vaughan smashed the Rovers into a 2-goal lead before half-time, but the Rovers' dominance was pierced by a Blair Alston goal that came out of nowhere and inspired a strong Thistle finish. Nevertheless, a 2-1 lead from the first leg is a very strong position to be in for a Rovers side who are now unbeaten in 6 games against the Firhill mob. I am Duncan Cameron, and with me for this playoff edition of the Oh No 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 podcast, I've got Blair Hopcroft. First of all, how are you, mate?
Very well, mate. Very well. I thoroughly enjoyed that intro. I'm not going to lie. Love a bit of Bon Jovi. That was very neatly done.
Yeah, I thought there was a wee swerve in there. I might have been going down another one of my self-indulgent tangents, but that was just a wee one.
That was good.
I've got Scott Fleming as well. How are you, Scott?
Yeah, really good, mate. And obviously we're a bit more upbeat after last night as well.
Yeah, definitely. It's just the three of us tonight, so I think we'll definitely have enough energy between the three of us to keep going. I'm not convinced that the defeat would have been the same, but definitely I'm looking forward to talking about this for as long as we can. Scott, I'm gonna start with you on this one because I think possibly for the first time ever we had a real decent chunk of a starting lineup from this podcast that seemed to come to fruition. Ian Murray very much in the Fleming ball frame of mind. Talk us through that starting lineup and the influence that you quite clearly had on it, please.
Well, I'm pretty sure if I was to have any say in that, then it's certainly not going to come to fruition like that. But no, I think it was the first time on paper anyway, it looked like it was going to be the formation that me and you seem to tend to go every week, which was a 4-2-3-1, and I think there was only maybe one player in the starting lineup that I didn't have. I think I had 10, the other 10, but it was still, to be honest, I seen a bit of negativity on social media saying like, oh, there's too many midfielders in the team that we're looking to, and I was like, I'm not seeing this at all. I'm like, Stanton will be up at number 10, Turner will be back out wide again, and look how well that went. Again, it was Arbroath, but still, like, Turner is very capable of creating plenty of chances. Stanton just creates something out of nothing all the time, just with his effort. And then Connolly can ping one in for wherever as well. It's like, you've got 3 guys in behind Vaughan there who just will shoot whenever he wants to shoot. So I just didn't see where folk were getting that at all, to be honest. But no, I thought it was the lineup that I wanted, and it was the lineup that we got. So I was over the minute with it. And yeah, I mean, at half time, obviously, we'll go through the first half, but at half time, you could not complain with what we'd witnessed and what we'd watched. I mean, it was clinical. It was just clinical. I mean, there's been a lot of times this season where I've went, oh, we've actually missed a lot of chances in our first half. We just took every chance basically that came to us. And that was what I was hoping that we would do. And I mean, Vaughan and Brown took their goals brilliantly. So no, yeah, lineup wise, I was happy with with what we went with.
Yeah. I mean, you very clearly, very kind of eloquently, I thought, when the pre-match kind of spelled out why you wanted Lewis Vaughan up front, and I think that, like, genuinely, I think that's obviously was within a ballpark of, that was Ian Murray's thinking as well. You know, if you've got Zach Rudden or Jack Hamilton, you're kind of trying to play Thistle at their own game. You know, they've got these big physical centre halves. That's what they want you to do, almost. Whereas with Vaughan, you know, he's dropping back a little bit. He's playing between the lines. You're playing with the ball at feet, and you see that. And again, as you say, we're jumping ahead, but in the actually, as I say that now, I can't remember if it's the second goal or if it's the chance that Connolly has where he could potentially slip Stanton in. But Vaughan's kind of in the centre circle and he just steps over the ball, actually just leaves it entirely and lets Brown run off him. And it's that's what Thistle don't want to be doing. They don't want to have all that movement and the ball at the feet and all that kind of stuff. So I'm the same as you. I was very, very pleased with that lineup. I didn't have any concerns about too many midfielders or anything like that at all. We spoke pre-match about how much Airdrie had dominated the midfield against Thistle, but then hadn't been able to make it count. That's got to be the tactic, is try and dominate the midfield. Blair, I know you. Let's not get into 4-2-3-1s and 4-1-3-2s and all that kind of stuff. But do feel free to give me any of your thoughts on that starting lineup. But also, just there's notable absences. So we've got. I'm thinking particularly of Dylan Easton, Josh Mullen, and Jack Hamilton. How much, if at all, are you reading into the fact that not only did they not start, they didn't come on at all last night?
See, I think I would, had the game been different from what it was, and the substitutions weren't made, I think he would read a lot more into it. It wouldn't surprise me if at least one of the three is carrying something. I would have expected to see probably at least one of them. But when the subs were made, I still think Murray got the subs right, actually, to an extent. The one, I mean, we'll talk about it probably at length, but the one that stands out for me is the one I would question is Rudden. I would have brought on Hamilton, so it does make me wonder if there's something lingering, if he's maybe not 100% fit for whatever reason. But at the same time, you know, we were winning the game. We've got another game on Friday. He's maybe just keeping his powder dry and keeping guys fit for the second game. You can't really read too much into it at all. But I was really pleased with the starting lineup. I think I agree with Scott that it was nowhere near as defensive as what people thought it was. But I think part of that is because I think everybody, and probably you guys included, assumed that it was going to be Brown and Byrne, like as two holding midfielders sitting kind of in that middle of the park and kind of banking it. And I really don't think it was. That was obviously the discussion we'd had on the group chat today, but whether it's 4-2-3-1 or 4-1-3-1-1 or whatever formation you want to call it, I was really impressed with how high Brown was in particular. First 20 minutes, I said that to my mate, like, Byrne's not touched the ball. He's not been involved, and he hasn't needed to be, because everything was just getting won in front of him. Brown was shutting everything down. He was running about like a madman. Stanton was back to, and see, that's the thing, the shape with a one holding midfielder always brought the best out of Stanton. And I thought last night was the best Stanton's been probably since he came back from his injury. He was back to that player that we had before who just doesn't give anybody a minute, just shuts everything down. So yeah, really pleased with the lineup, really pleased with the effort, pleased with the way that we started, actually. They were always going to, have a chance or two early on and try and come at us. I think their only hope was to try and get a goal early, because you could see how tired they were. They tired really quickly, particularly in the midfield. So no, I don't think we could have asked for any better, really, particularly in that first half.
Yeah, absolutely. You've taken my very next question right out of my mouth there, which was all about the start to the game felt so much more open than I thought it would be. If you're expecting it to be relatively cagey. And the question, which is you already answered, was going to be, do you think that's because Thistle felt like they had to score early?
Yeah.
Because that was how it felt to me. Was it really that they very consciously were tired or knew that they would be tired?
Yeah.
And it's almost, as I think we saw later on, the act of scoring a goal gives you additional energy, it gives you momentum and all that stuff, and it gives you a chance to dictate the game a little bit. And I think that was where that came from. And the other thing I think that really helped in the first half in particular was that Thistle, their two holding midfielders, so Nielsen and Stanway, both booked relatively early on.
20 minutes.
And that was the last thing that they were needing. Because again, they looked tired, Thistle, but in the first half, they looked mentally tired as much as physically. You could just see getting caught on the ball and not quite making the right decisions and making a little mistake, but then compounding it, and they couldn't get any kind of rhythm. But what I will say is, and this is always going to be the case, it was the case all through that game yesterday, will continue to be the case on Friday. They're just really dangerous in the final third. They've always got that chance. I said in the intro there that I thought that first half was as good as the Rovers have played in spells as they have at any point this season. And you watch the highlights, there's still plenty Thistle chances there. But it really is just that if they can get the ball into the final third, they've got the players who can do damage to it. And I mean, even at that, McInroy wide right, I thought was really poor. And they still create loads of chances just really through Robinson, Fitzpatrick, and obviously Brian Graham. But going kind of running into that first half, then I'd say the early exchanges, really quite open. There's two kind of big blocks in the Rovers box. It's I think it's Ewan Murray for both of them, kind of just throwing himself in the way, and then Kev makes a decent save from Fitzpatrick where he just tries to kind of race away from Ross Matthews. And really, so the next thing after that's the goal. So we'll talk about that obviously in a second. But just before we do so, Scott, am I right in saying that you had Ross Matthews in at right back in your lineup? Is that right?
Yeah, I think I was the only one that actually did.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, how do you think he got on against Aidan Fitzpatrick over the piece?
Well, I think the fact that we barely noticed Fitzpatrick after the first 15 minutes tells you that he had a pretty solid game. I mean, I think, as you say, he got a shot away quite early in the first half, and that was really, I think somebody had put it into our group chat saying that it looked like the balls were coming down his side deliberately to try and see if Fitzpatrick can kind of get change out of Matthews, and I think he did that one time to get that shot away, and I genuinely didn't notice him for the rest of the game. And the fact that you see, I mean, he was in the second half, and Connolly every time was just kind of chipping the ball round Fitzpatrick, and Fitzpatrick was just getting wound up so easily. If a ball was just hitting off him, going out for a throw-in or whatever, he was just, you could tell he was probably tired, but also just getting so frustrated. And I think that's what the whole Partick team was like. But no, I thought Ross Matthews in general, I think if you were going by a rating, it would be a 7, 8 out of 10. I think he was steady, and I mean, he put the ball into the box at the second goal, and whether he meant for who it was exactly going to is another question. But when you put a ball into a dangerous area, then yeah, you get rewarded at times for it. So no, I thought he was solid all night, to be fair.
Yeah, no, me too. I thought he was, again, just really, really good in what's an unfamiliar role, and that, I mean, the chance that Fitzpatrick does get the one where he runs off him, it's such a good touch from Fitzpatrick because the ball kind of bounces up almost into his midriff, and as it's coming down, he uses his thigh to kind of run it out and be able to kind of sprint away. I still think that many players in the division kind of are able to do that, but Matthews manages to keep tight enough to him that all he can do is shoot across the goal, and Kev, it's relatively comfortable as he pushes it away. There's a bit of Rovers pressure in the early kind of period as well, but then the first big breakthrough, obviously, is the goal. Some really nice kind of passing in this, but I think the main thing for me, Blair, is the kind of fluidity in this, and it speaks to your point previously about Scott Brown. He pops up in about 4 different places in this goal, including putting that in at the end. So, just give me your thoughts on the goal, please.
The word I used when we were chatting about it at kind of half time was patience. I like, we've not been that patient with the ball for a good portion of this season. At times it's almost been like a panic in the team. Like, we've got the ball, we're in a decent area, we need to get it in, or we need to do something with it. And you go back to probably before Christmas was when we were in the final third and looking comfortable with the ball on a regular basis. And it felt like that last night with that first goal. There was about 3 or 4 opportunities to put a cross in, and they didn't do it. And there are times where that can be quite frustrating, but you've also got to kind of look at the lineup we've got. You've got Vaughan in the middle, and they've got 3 or 4 6-foot+ monsters in there. We're not going to get joy lumping balls into the box. If you've got Jack Hamilton, get the ball in the box earlier, absolutely. But it was almost worth trying to kind of work it. And it was, a beautiful finish for Vaughan. Absolutely beautiful finish. Great bit of play, really patient, like I say, some really good passing, and some absolutely car crash defending. Stanton makes a run, and the two of them, the 2 centre halves, both fall. Or actually, it might be 1 centre half in the midfielder, I'm not sure, but the 2 of them follow Stanton's run and just leave Vaughan on his own. Like, Lewis Vaughan in the box on his own. Like, doesn't get any better than that. And a really, really tidy finish. Because again, he's got a lot of time, and he doesn't take it, which I think it actually helps him as well, because the keeper's not got a chance to set himself. I think had he taken a touch and tried to get it down or whatever, the keeper rushes out at him, and he probably squashes the chance a little bit more. But just taking it early, keeper's not got a chance. Sorry, I'm talking about Vaughan. This is the Scott Brown goal, isn't it? I'm talking about a completely
you give me
different
both,
goal.
but that's fine.
Yeah. Aye. Sorry, I've just realised I'm talking about a completely different goal. I'm so excited about last night.
That was everything you said was true. It was all right.
It was, but it felt like Scott Brown.
And to be fair, they both go. There are similar traits in both goals. I think we'll talk about Scott Brown for a second. Just give him his due.
I've been out for a few weeks. Give me a break.
It's all right. I'll ask Scott about it. But Scott, I'll just ask you that. In fact, it's not really a question. Cracking finish. Give me your thoughts on it, please.
I think, it was the fact that, was it Ross Matthews that put the ball into the box for the ball to be headed back towards Brown? Because again, he's just put it in an area, and I think there's 2 Partick players almost fighting over it, trying to win the header, and I don't know if it's Vaughan or somebody that's just sat underneath him, just going, well, you can win it if you want. Like, I'm just there to just kind of force you to head this away, sort of thing. And the fact that Brown just goes, oh, this is actually going to fall to me, and just sprints onto it, and just, it's actually, I think it was not till half time when I got to see it back that I realised how good a finish it was. Because first time you just went, oh, great, brilliant, we've scored. But it's the technique and the fact that he's sprinting at the time that he's hit it. He's not stopped to sort of wait on the ball coming at him. He's literally ran onto it. And there's plenty of guys that would either just completely skied it or even just mishit it, and it's trundled to the goalie. But he's just hit it, and it's just skidded off the surface into the goal. And it was. We've seen him obviously with that other goal that he scored this season, which was fair enough goal of the season. It was a absolute perler, but you know that he can hit a ball sweet as a nut when he connects. So I think with a goal like that, you're not surprised with Scott Brown. But I think it also came at a really good time because I felt that Partick first 15 minutes were doing all right, but you felt that if we can score here, they really are going to have to pull someone out the hat here because then they'll go. Their heads will be down, but also the fact that they've just played 2 games last week, whilst we've been all resting up, and I think that first half really proved who had that sort of 10-day break and who had to play 2 like pretty competitive games basically. So no, fair enough, and I'm glad for Scott as well because I said this on Sunday as well. I don't think he gets actually anywhere near the plaudits that he probably should do, and it's probably because he's actually been playing in defence half the season, and folk are like arguing whether he should be playing in defence or not. But at times he's had to play there due to injuries and suspensions. But I think when he's been in midfield, and last night, as Blair touched on, like I think that sort of it was more a free roaming role that he was in, and he was just pressing forward when he could. But I did think that it suited him, and that's the sort of game. I mean, I'm losing the sort of time on it, but the challenge, and it was at the second half that he put in. Honestly, it was the best challenge I think I've seen all season, and the Partick fans were wanting a red card and everything. It went back, and Michael Stewart had said on BBC, "What a tackle that is!" I mean, it's just the guy's. Honestly, I think he is one of the most underrated players in the team, but. Nah, I'm glad when he's able to pop up with a goal, and it was a really good finish.
Yeah, I think after he had to be subbed off, and he'd said that just his whole body was cramping, which I'm not surprised at, having watched that, because he is just everywhere. Even had a go at wiping somebody out on the byline as well. He had a wee kind of sliding into Sunday reminiscent moment.
That's exactly what I thought when he did it as well. Yeah, beautiful.
Because he was absolutely everywhere, and it's just at the start of that goal, I think is the best example of what I was saying before about Thistle being tired, kind of in the mind as much as anything. Mm-hmm. The ball zipped across to Nielsen, and he takes a bad first touch, and he just somehow manages to pop the ball straight up. And if you watch it back, he's got no idea where he's supposed to be or what he's supposed to be doing, because the ball pops up and he goes to take a step and he slips, which is fair enough. But as Connolly picks the ball up, Nielsen steps back again to drop into the channel, ostensibly to cover Aidan Connolly. Like, he's not thinking about who's where. And he drops off, looks over his shoulder, realises there's nobody there, and then steps up again. But as he steps up, Vaughan drifts into the channel behind him. And that's where all that space comes from, because he's just not there. Like, he's just shattered.
But that was the kind of story of Partick I felt in that first half, particularly up until the second goal, which I've already described in great detail. But they were like at sixes and sevens. They were just, and I mean, you mentioned the bookings early on. I actually don't remember the Stanway booking particularly, but the other one is cheap. Like I think it's maybe, I can't remember who it is that kicks the ball away first. Is it Fitzpatrick maybe that does it the first time and the referee warns him?
It was.
Yeah, I think it was Fitzpatrick the first one, and the referee warns him and is like, cut it out, it's no happening, get on with it. And within about 3 or 4 minutes, Nielsen does exactly the same thing. And for no reason. Absolutely. I mean, he's on the half. Like, actually, I think we were beyond the halfway. We're in our own half with a free kick. It's not particularly dangerous. And he runs over and just stabs the ball away and turns and runs, and the ref books him. And I'm like, at that point, if I'm in the Partick team, I'm thinking, what are you playing at? Like, you're selling yourself short, but you're selling us short too, because at that point, you kind of saw it, like 2 centre midfielders both on a booking. Like, here we go. Like, you can really, really start to push them and get at them. And the mistakes started to drip in. There was a few times where Stanton robbed them of possession on both sides. And it was just that kind of sixes and sevens, like I say, they just weren't it wasn't cohesive at all in that first half, and we took advantage of it, which was pleasing because the amount of times this season, and actually for years, where you can watch a game of football and you're like, we need to score. We need to score now, because if we don't score now, this is going to come back to haunt us. But yeah, taking advantage of it made a massive, massive difference.
So there's a couple other chances in there for the Rovers in that first half. So there's one, as you say, Stanton, I think it's Macbeth, he takes the ball off on the right-hand side, and as he cuts it back, there's two that are very close. There's one that Vaughan puts just wide, and then there's one a couple of minutes later where it's knocked back and Turner shoots over the bar.
Yeah,
I think that's possibly the one where you're looking for just a little bit more quality in that one. Because I think the way it comes back to him, if that's on target, the keeper's going to really struggle with it. And then the other big one is the break where they're running through and it's kind of clipped into Connolly, and as he's on the turn, and you can see why he shoots, because it feels like how you score a goal.
Yeah.
Like as he receives the pass and he's on the turn and he spins, and you think he's just going to wrap this into the top corner, but that stands there, and it's as he looks, he's got time to see him. Like he has to actually like cross his eye line, has to pass over Sam Stanton before he can get a shot away. And I think if he knocks that in, that's you're scoring.
I think that was the first time I've ever seen Stanton actually raging with somebody, like for not doing something. Yeah. Like he was absolutely going off his rocker, and I'm like, this is the passion you want to see, but I'm just like, that's the first time I've seen it out of Stanton, like properly.
And Connolly spent a good 3 or 4 minutes apologising to him after it. Every time the ball kind of went out of play, he's like, "Oh, really sorry about that, mate. Really sorry." And Stanton's like, "Come on." But it was, you could see it in Aidan Connolly, like he was gutted with himself, because it was not. It's one of those. Not only does he not roll him in, it is a horrendously tame effort. By his standards, by anybody's standards. But I agree with you, Duncan, when he gets that ball and he turns, that's not just how you score a goal, that's how Aidan Connolly scores a goal. Like that is him to a T. Like just on that turn, like you say, on his left foot and just lining up that top corner, and he just doesn't get behind it at all. The other one was, I thought Turner was really good. Again, really, really impressed. But there was the one on the far left. I don't know if it was a throw-in or a corner, but the ball kind of ended up bouncing back out to him. And he comes in and he puts it into Vaughan, who hits it on the turn.
Yes.
So Vaughan, it kind of comes into him and he takes it really early. And actually, I just feel had he gone for the other corner, had he gone across goal, because the keeper's rooted, like not got a chance. But that was kind of the point where you're going, chance after chance after chance, like it's coming.
And that's maybe the one kind of disappointment for me with that is, with these chances, didn't really test the goalkeeper more.
Yeah,
I said that about Airdrie, that I just didn't think they were. I'm just not convinced David Mitchell's very good fundamentally. That's my thesis point on this. And really, other than the goals, and he's got no chance for the goals, you can't criticise him for that, but other than the goals, the only other thing he's really got to do, actually, is that Aidan Connolly one that is relatively tame. Just didn't really ask him to do a huge amount more than that. No. But if we're saving that till Friday, I'm absolutely happy with that. Just to very briefly come back to the second goal that Blair's already covered. Correspondent from the future. Just question for you,
Scott. They were very similar in my defence. Very similar.
They were. Definitely. They had similar vibes. Do you think there's many other strikers, many other forwards in the division, Scott, who take that first time as that ball comes across to Lewis Vaughan?
I think somebody that was maybe 50 yards further away from the goal probably would have admired that strike, because I think he would have done similar. Brian Graham, I think, and maybe Rory Payton. I think they're the only, and funny enough, they're the top 3 scorers in the league, and that's just guys that have a shot on instinct, and they actually are better hitting efforts first time and not having to think about it than a shot where they're maybe one-on-one with a goalie, or they've got too much time to think about it and then they might just end up hitting it at the goalie or whatever. But no, I mean, again, he couldn't have hit it any better. It just came off sweet as a nut, and the fact that he's hit it so quick, Mitchell's got absolutely no chance of even reacting to it. He's just, before he's even set himself, the ball's already hit the back of the net. So, if anything, I was just thanking Lewis Nielsen for being a fanny. I mean, like, to be just, as players just said, you cannot just leave Lewis Vaughan in the box. And Lewis Nielsen's meant to be a centre-half by trade. He's playing centre-mid because, for some reason, Doolan's been wanting to play him in there. But he came from Hearts as a centre-half. He's on loan for Hearts. And Hearts have got big plans for him, apparently, when they signed him for Dundee United as a future centre-half for Hearts. So, I mean, go by last night, he's got no chance. But, like, that, it was just the fact that you run away from a man that's sitting basically on the penalty spot himself, and he's went to win a ball off of Stanton when he's sent, when, is it Macbeth or Muirhead is on Stanton already? There's no need for him to be going after that ball. Like, just no need. But yet, I was absolutely over the moon that he did, because it just meant that Vaughan was just all alone. And yeah, great finish, as we've said. But no, again, just over the moon for Louis, because yeah, we say it every week that he does score. It's just great to see him scoring goals again and playing. Because, I mean, there's nobody arguably more worth this sort of season than Lewis Vaughan. Like, I mean, the guy's been through hell with injuries, and I mean, if we were to even just get through this tie, like, he's done brilliantly this season, no matter what happens. How it ends anyway. So I think, yeah, and he was in the running for Player of the Year for the Championship as well. So no, fair play to him, and yeah, hopefully he scores again on Friday.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just all about the technique, because he sets himself really early, but he sets it really early because he knows he can do it. As the ball comes in, he's almost like sort of baseball player. He just like sets his body and then just swings through the ball as it comes in. And that's what I think. As I say, I think most players, if they've got the time to think about it, realise they've got the space and actually try to kind of cushion that down. And to be honest, probably still score. And I think a lot of them, if you try and take that first time, it's in the canal. Like, it's just because the ball it's coming up off the turf, and it just, as you swing through that, it's so easy to lean back and just fire away. So the technique's incredible, but the build up to it as well, just again echoes what we've already been saying. Scott Brown kind of drives right through the middle of that Thistle defence, plays a little 1-2. And as he goes into the corner, it's Aaron Muirhead that he takes with him. And that really then is that's the catalyst for what happened, because Lewis Nielsen, as you say, drops back in. But it's then him and Luke Macbeth, who've both done the same thing this season. So they started, Luke Macbeth came in January. He was playing as the defensive midfielder, and Nielsen was playing the centre-half. And then, 4, 5, 6 weeks ago, we swapped them round. But again, it means that you've not got that, like, natural set ability of a centre-half. It's the kind of thing that we've seen when we've had Scott Brown in the back, where a ball comes in and you're thinking about it too much. And I think that actually, is the thing with that Thistle defence, as much as anything, is 100 times out of 100, if they're available, Harry Milne plays left back, Jack McMillan plays right back, Aaron Muirhead plays centre-half, and then next to him, it's just another guy. Like, it's somebody next to him. It's been Macbeth, it's been Nielsen, it's been O'Reilly, latterly, and like that, I think, has been the case. They're just trying to find somebody else to play that other centre half, and it's when Muirhead gets dragged out of it that problem then is created. And it will be interesting to see what happens on Friday, because I would be surprised, just based on the way he came off last night, very surprised if Aaron Muirhead's in any fit condition to be playing again on Friday.
It looked like a hamstring, didn't it? He was kind of kind of holding him, and then he did a weird thing where he kind of walked to the touchline and then he walked back onto the pitch, and he walked along the touchline but on the pitch. I couldn't figure out at that point. I was like, is he going off or is he wanting to come back on here? But it was so bizarre. But he's a massive loss for them. Massive. Because if they're now only got the option of those two at centre half, there's a bit of joy to be had there.
Well, that's so I was saying before the game that really, I'm not an expert on Partick Thistle, but as I look at that and look at who they've got on the bench, that they could only really, without getting kind of drastically worse, they could only really bring other players in at centre half and at central midfield. Because other than that on the bench, it's kids basically. Even Kieran and Gwenya, who came on that left hand side, decent enough, did us a turn last season. He's nowhere near the level of Harry Milne as a left back, and he's certainly nowhere near the level of Aidan Fitzpatrick as a left winger. But Dan O'Reilly is a decent enough championship centre half. I suspect he'll start in that central defence, and they might mess around with their midfielders. But for me, and obviously we'll need to talk about at least one of them, based on the evidence of this season, Bannigan, Stanway, Alston, McEnroy, Neilston and Macbeth, you want to throw them in as well. They've got capacity to be decent on an individual basis, some of them more than others. I don't think there's any of them that are standouts.
No.
I don't think there's any of them that, like happened to Thistle last season, they lost in the playoff final, and then Dundee United and Ross County and Dundee were like, right, hang on, who can we get out of this? I'm not convinced there's anybody in that you'd be like desperate to go and take. And as I say, it'll be interesting to see how they rejig and who retains a place and who doesn't going into Friday. But we'll talk about that a little bit. Just to kind of round off the first half, because we're still only currently about 40 minutes in.
I was going to say we're nearly at half time.
Yeah. Kevin Dabrowski makes another couple of decent kind of interventions in the last 5 minutes of that half. So he pushes away across, and then there's a shot that's rifled at him, not for the last time in the evening, but he just does very, very well. Such strong wrists behind these shots that he gets. And I think that's the fact. There's a couple of people last night saying, in that game, he doesn't make any saves that you wouldn't sort of expect a championship goalkeeper to make, which is probably true. Mm-hmm. But it's not just that he's making the saves for me, it's how he makes them, and it's how comprehensively he saves them, I suppose. So that he keeps the ball out and it's going clear. Like he's getting really, he's not bobbling it back into his area, any of that kind of stuff. I thought he was absolutely outstanding last night.
He was.
Did everything that was asked of him, and more, really. Just in stark contrast to maybe what some of us felt right at the beginning of the season. I think he was actively inspiring confidence in his teammates last night. So I thought he was excellent. So we're moving us on a little bit. So as we get into half time, really the first notable thing in the second half, Lewis Vaughan on that left hand side, again running at a tired defender, goes by him. I was right behind this, and I could not believe it didn't go in.
I still don't know what happened. The flight of the ball just doesn't. It's like when you watch a game and like the ball bursts, like that old thing in the it's not happened for a long time, to be fair, but somebody scalps a shot or whatever and the ball bursts and it just therefore doesn't fly the way that you would. I don't even know if I'm explaining this right, but I've watched the replay about 3 or 4 times. I still can't figure out what Vaughan does wrong. Like he does everything right. He cuts across, he opens everything up, and then he hits the shot, and it doesn't seem to swerve, but it seems to dip in the wrong direction. It's really bizarre.
Yeah, it's a kind of knuckleball almost that he's hit, but then even the way it goes by the post, it then. You're right. Actually, I'm watching it back now. It's it's a really unnatural flight of a ball. It's like
It really is. I wondered if it, in real time, I was like, is he skilled? You know, sometimes when they hit a shot and it glances the bar or glances a post. I was like, is that what's happened? But it doesn't hit the woodwork.
this is a really niche reference, but it's not like this podcast. There was there was an early sort of viral video in the very early kind of years of YouTube, and I think it was Nike who put it together, and it was Ronaldinho doing
Hitting the
keepy
bar.
uppies and then volleying and hitting the bar, but it
Yeah.
came back off the bar. He's like 20 yards out,
Yeah.
comes back, and he takes it on the chest, does another couple of keepy uppies, and then does it again. And then afterwards, it's like, yeah, it's fake, it's CGI. I mean, once you know it's fake, you're like, actually, yeah, you can see it's a slightly unnatural kind of path in the ball. That's what that looks like.
It does
looks
look like
someone's
that.
drawn in the ball, some sort of After Effects.
Deep fake.
Yeah, but it deserved a goal. And I think if that goes in 5 minutes after half time, I don't know if necessarily thought, that would be the tie over, but I don't know how Thistle respond for like the 20 minutes after that. And I could easily see a world where they concede another couple. Because they would just be so shattered by that.
Yeah.
In addition to all the other ways that they were already quite clearly shattered. Another really, really good piece of quality. I think it deserved a goal. After that, I think that the next thing I've got written down in my notes here is we start getting into substitutions. So Thistle bring on Dan O'Reilly and Kieran Ngwenya for Lewis Nielsen and Kerr McInroy. So McInroy had been playing right wing. Fitzpatrick goes over to the right wing. Now, I think 90% of that is because Kieran Ngwenya can only play on the left. So he has to go on the left wing. But I think it does also speak to the fact that Fitzpatrick wasn't getting any change out of Ross Matthews.
Yeah.
Because if he was, they'd have left him. They'd have just asked Ngwenya to do his best on the other side. So again, kudos to Ross Matthews for that. I also thought he handled Kieran Ngwenya pretty well. Ngwenya's not short of pace by any means at all. But I thought Ross marshalled him pretty well. Very ably assisted by Dylan Corr, who we'll go on to in a second as well.
Yeah.
The Rovers, 5 minutes after that, make a change as well. So Callum Smith comes on for Aidan Connolly. And then another 10 minutes after that, Blair Alston comes on for the boy Stanway in the middle of the park. Now, the goal comes literally a minute after that. It might well be Alston's first touch. Certainly it must be one of his first touches. The thing that I wanted to kind of cover on this, I saw a couple of people saying last night that the substitutions changed the game. I don't know if they did. I kind of want to take issue with that a little bit. I think the goal changed the game. And you could argue very clearly that one of the substitutes scored the goal. So in effect, but it didn't feel to me like, so they made their first two changes, as a good 10 minutes, 15 minutes before the goal. I didn't feel like the pattern of the game had really changed at that point. It was only the fact of the goal going in that really changed it. Would you agree with that, Blair? Or do you want to have a fight about it?
No, yeah, let's go. No, I do. I agree. The game did change, but I don't think it was because of the substitutions. I think the Partick changed their shape a little bit. They almost went 4 up front when they were 2-0 down, and the point at which he brought Blair Alston on was the point at which that change massively kind of happened. He pushed Fitzpatrick in particular further forward. He was now no longer kind of really doing any kind of defensive duty at all. It was very much a forward role, and they went really direct at that point. Do you know what I mean? It was just shelling the ball into Brian Graham and hoping for something to spill off of him. And like, I think it's been well covered that it's not exactly our strongest suit is dealing with that kind of game this season. Although, to be fair, I think we dealt with it well. That was where their chances came from. But the worst goal I think I've seen us concede in a long time. I was raging, absolutely fizzing at that goal. He just fell over. The ball hit him in the head and dropped to somebody beside him. Like, you couldn't make that. If that he could have done that another 100 times. It's a bit like the Ali Adams goal, I suppose. He could do it 100 times and it would land differently every single time. That's the one that landed. Crap.
Maybe I'm just too nice, but I'm inclined to give Scott Robinson a bit of credit for that. And I know this isn't the prevailing view, but I think he's got his eyes on the ball. I think there is at least an element of purpose in what he's doing.
Unless he's a seal, he is not capable of meaning that. I mean, don't get me wrong, he's fallen over. He is, I mean, he's actively trying to play the ball, but he's a footballer. That's his job. Like, he's not meant to. I mean, even if he's meant to put his head on it, there is no way he's controlled that header into the feet of Blair Alston. It is luck, nothing but.
I mean, if anything, he actually puts it slightly behind them. But I think, I don't know. I think he at least intends to get the ball towards Alston. Scott, weigh in on this. Whose team are you on?
I do think he's just. I do think he just fell over and it hit him. I just don't see how.
Thank you.
I don't see how somebody can be like that skilled in the Championship to do that. If they were going to fall over and then actually go and head it to somebody exactly like 5 yards away from, that's like, he's actually still got to get it past or round a defender as well. Like, because we've got a defender sort of who should have probably been tighter to him, but still has let him fall over and let the ball hit him. But I think I agree with Blair. It was an extremely frustrating goal because you're just like, come on, we've done like absolutely nothing wrong the night in terms of letting Partick have a few like half chances or sort of shots of distance, but yet this goal's come out of nothing and then they're right back in it. And from that, I would say maybe the next 10 minutes, I feared a little bit that we might concede again, just because we were kind of, I don't know, shell shocked, but we were like, all right, well, let's try and make sure that we don't lose or draw this game now, which is fine, but at the same time, we're the ones that haven't played 2 games in the last week. We should have still been kind of going, well, they're running on empty almost, just trying to get through this game. But that goal's obviously just giving them that little spark. And yeah, Alston had like a couple of sort of chances after that Dabrowski's had to make a save off it and stuff like that. But I still think once we dealt with that 10-minute period, then we settled back down again and dealt with the game. But because then you had guys like Bruni going off saying that literally every part of his body was cramping up. So you're just like, well, fair enough. And yeah, you're kind of hoping at this point that you just hold on to 2-1, because if you do go chasing a third, then that's when you could leave yourself open to them getting that equaliser. And at the end of the day, if you had told us going into that game that we're going to come away 2-1 winners, you're taking it every day of the week. So, like, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And that the thing, as I say, I don't really buy into the substitutions change the game, but I categorically the goal changed the game.
Yeah.
But that was like an instant recharge of the batteries for Thistle. And then they just suddenly had more purpose and more belief and an extra little bit of energy. And I think, as much as anything, like they just, things like Dan O'Reilly just knocking the ball long, like 40 or 50 yards and seeing what breaks. When you've just scored a goal, that feels good. Whereas if you're 2-0 down and you're doing it, you do exactly the same ball up, but the fans are like, oh, come on, what's the plan here? And all this kind of stuff. It just gives you that extra belief. And it was working for them. They were getting that. kind of, I think adding to that, you got Keith Watson going off, which I think you would have to heavily suspect is a recurrence of these injuries that he's been dealing with for basically the full season. Safe to say, Blair, I think that'll be the last we see of Keith Watson certainly for this season. Okay.
I don't even think for this season. I think that's his race run. I mean, if you're looking at it, whether it's Championship or Premier League next season, you're not taking a risk on Keith Watson again, which is a shame because I really enjoyed his performance last night. There was a couple of times where the ball was loose or whatever, and he rattled it into row Z in the stand or whatever, and you're thinking, do you know what? He's just, and I think it was you that said it earlier in the season, he's a defender that defends. First and foremost, he just does his job. You know what you're getting with him. And he brings the best out of... I actually think he brings the best out of Ewan Murray as well, because when he goes off, Ewan Murray made 3 or 4 kind of really stupid decisions. And I think it's that thing of, like, I really like Ewan Murray, and I think he's really experienced, but I think he benefits from having somebody alongside him who is experienced. It's like when Ewan Murray has to step up and be the experienced defender.
Yeah.
He almost overthinks things, and he doesn't do things the way that he would want to do it. I feel really sorry for Keith Watson, but I do think that'll be him done. Do you think as well? I was going to say, like, see the nature of conceding that goal and the way that we conceded it. Is that not almost worse as well for the players? It's like there's no one's made a mistake. You've not had a player who's done something wrong. There's an element of, this might just not be our night. Like, this could be, like, do you know the way that football kind of does that to you? It must be really hard to kind of bounce back. And they're, like you say, they're shelling balls at that point into Brian Graham.
And I think Thistle are the most that team in the division.
Yeah.
The team that's most likely to just score one out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And not through, like, you know, they've got some sort of good luck charm or anything. It's because they've got decent attackers.
Brian Graham.
The one where the header, the ball comes in and he kind of just kind of flicks it on, but gets decent power behind it. And then, you know, Kevin Dabrowski's right behind it and holds on, does really, really well. But, like, would you have been at all surprised to see that end up in the back of the net? And it's just, and that again just gives you such belief, just having a Brian Graham, where, I mean, he maybe came off in the last couple of minutes and won the Airdrie game, but I don't think he did. I think that's him done the full 90 minutes in all 3 of those games, and you can see why. Because if you need a goal, even if it's a case of just wheeling him out onto the penalty spot, you would do that. And he's not at that point. Like Robbie was saying in the week, like, Brian Graham's incredibly fit. He's not.
He does a fair amount of running, actually, for an older target man striker, if you like. He still does a fair amount of running. Yeah,
it's not like when Charlie Adam was in his Dundee spell and he was just, like, ambling around, smoking a tab and, like, rifling the ball in from 40 yards. Like, Brian Graham's doing it all, and he scores these goals as well, and that's going to be a thing on Friday as well. Regardless of how tired you are, he's such a good talisman to have, and you've always got that danger. And I think you're right, Blair, that it's almost that case of, like, you're like, Raph, I can just keep. Well, I actually literally said it in the pre-match. Like, if you can keep Brian Graham quiet and you can keep Aidan Fitzpatrick quiet, there's not many more names on that list, really. And they did a brilliant job of keeping Brian Graham, you know, away from the goal and all that kind of stuff. Dealt with what he had to do, and then a boy falls in his arse and plays somebody clean through, and you think, how? It's that. How are we supposed to defend that? How are we supposed to prevent that from happening? I also actually think credit to Blair Alston for the finish as well, because it is a little bit behind them, and he does very well just to kind of bring that across. I think all 3 finishes are very, very good, and kind of befitting a playoff game where you've got, you know, your best teams all that kind of stuff. Very, very good technique in that. Dylan Corr obviously comes on for Keith Watson. This I thought was interesting at the time, and maybe it's informed by the fact that 5 minutes later Scott Brown comes off anyway. But I think 6 weeks ago, 10 weeks ago, there's no question Scott Brown would drop back into the defence. So interesting to see that Dylan Corr, even with a shoulder injury, and fair play to him for coming back with that still hanging around. Interesting to see. Scott, do you suspect it'll be Dylan Corr in from the start on Friday? Can you see any other possibility there?
Well, I mean, just going by this season, I think there is obviously the possibility that Scott Brown could play there. It's not out the question, but I think I would go with Corr. No, just if he's fully fit or if he knows that he's going to be fine. If there's a doubt about him, then that's when Murray's got to be sensible and go, right, well, if there is any doubt that he might not be able to do a full 90 or whatever, then he might need to go with Brown at centre-half again. But no, I think Dylan's shown in the last, month of the season when he's actually been given games when it was kind of the league was over, we were kind of resting players, giving guys a break if they were carrying anything sort of thing. Dylan's actually been the sort of player, and maybe Scott McGill to an extent as well, that have kind of grasped that opportunity where they've actually shown, I can play at this level and be a pretty competent player at this level. For somebody that's only, I think, this year turned 20 as well, or he might even still be 19, I'm not sure. But he's still a very inexperienced centre-half, but yet he's looked pretty comfortable the last few weeks. You're going up against Morton last night, for instance. He was going up against Brian Graham for a bit as well. You're going up against some really good sort of target men that he's got to try and fight with, and at the same time, whilst got a heavily strapped shoulder. So fair play to him, and I mean, obviously we'll talk about the lineup soon, but for Friday, I would put Corr in for centre half just because I want Brown in that same position in midfield. But it's just going to come down to how fit is he. I think that's the only question about it, to be honest.
I think that's going to be a big thing for both teams. Just going to be a case of who's fit. Stuff like starting point, who's fit. More so probably for Thistle, obviously, because they need to actually be considered like who's got energy left, who's actually got anything left in the tank, because that's 3 really close, really competitive games that they've had in such a short space of time, and it's obviously this one will likely be the same. So just to kind of probably round off this game, still got plenty to cover. Scott McGill and Zach Rudden come on for Lewis Vaughan and for Scott Brown for the last 10 minutes. Now, I had obviously touched upon it right at the beginning. I think we knew that there was some sort of issue for Josh Mullen and for Dylan Easton. How significant or not that is unknown. So I think the fact that Scott McGill came on at left wing there, it will be interesting to see, because as you said, Blair, in answer to that question, is it a case of actually Josh Mullen and Dylan Easton are injured, frankly, and really just putting them on the bench was almost kidology to keep Thistle on their toes? Or was it a case of Ian Murray was looking at it and going, we're winning, I can keep these boys out of danger for another 3 or 4 days, and they're ready to go for Friday. So that'll be interesting in that sense. Zach Rudden, I want to talk about him just a little bit. Very specific job that he comes on there to do in that final period. I'm not convinced it's his game as much as anything. And I think...
What, football?
I was going to say, which bit of it?
No, not quite. I think he's a penalty box striker, and I think he's a bit of a kind of rock'em sock'em robot to just be gangling about the penalty spot. And that, I think, we need to kind of recognise, because the last 10 minutes, just, yeah, it's too risky. You're giving the ball away by trying to ask him to do stuff that I'm just not convinced he can do. So, I don't know what my question is. I don't really have a
There's
wider
not
point.
really a question to ask, is there? I mean, let's be perfectly honest. He was awful. Like, and I don't want to be negative, because last night was great, and I thoroughly enjoyed every minute of it. He was awful. He did not play well when he came on. He didn't offer what, like you say, what we needed at that point, but he also didn't really offer anything else. When we first signed him, I was on here and I said, meh. And then he had 2 or 3 good games, and he did. And I was like, by the way, I think I'm wrong. Nah, I'm pretty sure meh is about the right thing. And I feel really bad now, but there's no world of difference between him and Alex Jakubiak for me at this point. They offer pretty much the same. They'll run about, they'll do a bit. They're not scoring goals. Like, you're a striker, you're meant to score goals. I know you're going to come in and tell me I'm wrong, Duncan, but
No, I'm not going to tell you you're wrong. I'm too polite for that.
I'm not sure he does so much running that you're on about.
well, there is that.
I think there's a difference. I think that I actually think they're almost opposite ends of the scale. Almost, actually, I think Jack Rudden's probably quite a good finisher. I just don't think we've asked him to do much finishing. But that in itself, that's not like, oh, Jack Rudden would be brilliant if only we played to his strengths. Yeah, I think it's a case of, like, there's almost no point in him running outside the box, because he's not affecting things enough. And it is that there needs to be a recognition of, either on his part or on the part of the manager, to say, but either don't send him on to do that, or, you know, have another plan for how to do, for when he's on the part. I think in the penalty box, I think he's decent. I think he's better than a lot of the guys that we've asked to do these similar types of jobs inside the box. But outside the box, it's not coming off for him. No. And you see it when he's jumping for his headers, and he looks awkward to deal with, but he also kind of just
looks awkward.
Looks awkward, yeah. Just generally, like
baby giraffe that doesn't know how to use his feet.
There's not a lot of, like, he wins a header 1 out of every 3, but he's kind of knocking them forward, and you think, well, you're the furthest forward, so there's no really.
I was going to say that, actually. He won 1 header last night, and the header he won, he got too much on it. It was the opposite. Like, if he just had managed to get it down or whatever, but he won 1 header, and he properly put his head through it. I'm like, who are you heading it to? There's no one else there.
But that is, I think it's. I don't think it was the time for him, but I think this is where it comes to, well, the Jack Hamilton's there.
Yeah.
So specifically that job, Jack Hamilton, I think, is so much better suited to it. But then I see that then raises the question of, well, actually, then was Jack Hamilton not fully fit himself, or was he absolutely fine? Ian Murray preferred Jack Rudden for that, and Jack Hamilton's, fighting fit for Friday. Be interesting to see. But that, yeah, it's a slightly negative note to end on, but purely just because that was the way that game ended, really. I mean, totally. It did, as you said, Scott, the end of the game was very much Thistle. It wasn't quite one-way traffic, but Thistle were kind of dictating the flow of the game. The chances at the end of the game were all Thistle loading the box and knocking the ball in. And there's more decent saves from Kevin Dabrowski in there again. Nothing flashy, but he holds on to just about everything that comes near him in that latter period. And I think his positioning is so good that he makes them look easy. There's a couple that the ball's popping up from 4 yards out, and he doesn't. It feels like he's standing there with his hands the whole time. and the ball just lands in between his palms, which is, as I say, that's good goalkeeping. That's better goalkeeping than having to tip it over the bar. And then the final whistle goes, and I think it's that kind of relief of. It felt the final whistle went. It felt like winning a normal league game where you're like, I've won 2-1 and we've held on. Buoyed by like an extra, like actually, we get to almost like reset and go again on our terms. And we've got this extra. It feels like everything's going our way on the back of that. Like I was full of confidence beforehand. I said that in the pre-match. And the last time I felt like that was when we went up to Tannadice the second time. I remember saying before that, so I feel like everything's going our way. And like whatever happens, I'm kind of confident that we'll put on a good show and we'll kind of do all right for ourselves. And then I saw the lineup for that game and I was like, what's happened? What's going on? There wasn't a moment like that for me last night. There wasn't any point where I was like, oh, that's the kicker, that's the bit that's going to let us down. Even the goal was kind of fine. It was like, oh, right, okay, we've conceded that goal. It felt much earlier than it did, than it actually was to me. I couldn't believe it looking back. So it was only played 18 minutes.
Yeah.
Plus 6 at 2-1. Felt like a much longer period, but it feels, I don't know about you. I'll ask you, that's this point in the programme. Does it feel to you, Blair, like that was the storm weathered and that we're almost, starting again on Friday from a position of strength? Or do you expect that pattern of Thistle kind of chasing the game to be in place from kick-off on Friday?
Yeah, I think the latter very much. I actually think they're going to go into Friday the same way that I feel they started last night. They need to score early because I don't think they've got the legs to play us toe to toe for 90 minutes again. They need to be in with a shout, and to be in with a shout, they need a goal. So I think if they get a goal early, they can revert back to get the ball into Brian Graham and see what he can do for you. But I think if we score, I think the game's, like, I'm not going to say the game's done, but at that point, like, I'm not sure Thistle have got the energy and the muster to kind of get back in it again. It'll be really interesting, actually, that the first goal is going to be massive on Friday. Absolutely massive. Because if they score first, the whole tie swings in their favour. Like, do you know what I mean? The nerves kick in and everything happens. Whereas if we score first, I feel like it could be one of those where, like you said earlier, you wouldn't be surprised if it ends up being 3 or 4. But I think Friday's going to be quite a nervy one, actually. And I was going to say St Johnstone have just equalised.
Yes, that game's just finished.
Just finished.
1 each, which I think is quite good for us or Thistle. Whoever goes through, the team they will play will have had to have put full effort in. If St Johnstone had get beaten tonight, they would have at least been able to rest players next week, knowing fine well they were going into the playoffs. So whoever that will be will at least have had to have knocked their pan in and will then be hopefully crushingly disappointed. Because obviously I hope beyond hope that it's us. But even if it's Thistle, I'd rather Thistle go up than either of those two stay up, whoever it is. Right, just to kind of cover off Friday then, let's do a quick spin through some lineups because there are some decisions to be made and see where else that takes us. Scott, you basically picked the team for last night, so why don't you have a go for Fridays?
I mean, I think we'll stick to probably a similar shape. I don't see why we would go away from it. Just the fact that, well, it worked, especially in the first half. So I don't see us making too many changes. Yeah, obviously it will depend on guys' fitness levels and injuries and stuff, but I think the only one that obviously will be forced into is obviously Keith Watson's probably not going to play. So So really the debate is whether Dylan Corr you're flinging him in, as we discussed. So I've got Corr down in my lineup just because I think the fact that he looked fine when he came on. So I'm going to guess that he seems confident enough that with his shoulder being strapped up and the fact that he's been training for a few days as well, you would think that they would have known in training whether it was going to be okay or not. So it seems to be fine. So I've got, obviously Kevin goals. I'm sticking with Matthews again at right back. I just think that, he's played there now 3 games in a row and he's looked very competent there and he's done a really good job and he did a good job on Tuesday, so I don't see why we would take him out when he's playing well. And then obviously Corr and Murray at centre half with Liam Dick at left back. Actually, just quickly on Liam Dick, I actually thought he was quietly really good last night because he was just going about his business without anybody really noticing him, and he just dealt with anything that came down his side, headed anything, kicked, cleared anything. I just thought he was just very steady last night, and that's all you need to be right now is just in the playoffs, don't be taking any risks, and he didn't. So no, I thought he had a pretty good game. In my actually, I've just realised that I'm not playing Sean Byrne. I didn't have him in for Tuesdays, so I think I've just went with the fact that I didn't have him in for Tuesday anyway, that I've just kept him out. But I've got Stanton and Brown as the 2, and then I've got I'm actually on mine's I've brought in Callum Smith on the left. I think it will be quite good to actually get a little bit just that extra pace on the wing to really test out somebody like McMillan. He's now played 90 minutes. So he's also, and he kind of looked a bit shaky. The second leg against Ergie came off looking like either with cramp or with a slight injury. So I think if you've got somebody with proper pace like Callum Smith able to really take him on, I'd be quite interested to see how that worked. And then I've got either Mullen or Connolly on the right, depending on if Mullen's fit enough, obviously. If not, then I would stick with Connolly, and then I've got Turner at 10 and Vaughan up front. I think that it was telling that Hamilton didn't come on Tuesday, so I just don't see Hamilton starting. And the fact that Vaughan, I just think is suited to play against Partick, as I said on Sunday. I just think we're going to get plenty of times to shoot, and I think Vaughan's our best finisher, so I would just have him up front again.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you're saying. I've got the same defence. Again, I consider James Brown coming back in for the reasons we talked about before. Last night's where, he's literally more of a defender than Ross Matthews is, up against Aidan Fitzpatrick, but I don't think Ross Matthews put a foot wrong. And it's before you get the assist that he got. So, yeah, I'm quite happy with Matthews staying in there. I am quite keen on keeping Sean Byrne in there. I think Sean Byrne, for me, is the kind of guy you want in a game like this, where, if you could exercise complete control over this 90 minutes, you go through. And I think Sean Byrne is one of the best players for controlling the game of football in the division. So I've left kind of Scott Brown and Sean Byrne as the base of my midfield. Sam Stanton ahead of them. For that kind of central midfield's unchanged. I'm inclined to keep Kyle Turner on that left-hand side. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. Jack McMillan's not having a fun time trying to deal with him as it is. The amount of movement that Kyle Turner gives you as well, I meant to mention that earlier on, he pops up everywhere. And, although he's nominally at that left-hand side, he'll drift across, but he'll bring the ball right across as well. It must be a nightmare to defend against. On the other side, if Josh Mullen is fit, then I would go over Josh Mullen over Aidan Connolly just to get additional kind of fresh legs in there. I think Partick Thistle are going to be very, very tired. It makes sense to make some changes, and I'm not made any others. So that would be, I think it would make sense. And I think you've got to keep Vaughan up front, but I would have Jack Hamilton on starter blocks ready to come on at basically any point. Because I think he offers you so much going forward and defensively that I really hope there isn't any sort of fitness issue with Jack Hamilton, because I think he would be a real asset for a game like this, more so than many others. Blair, what about you? Any thoughts on the lineups?
I'm even more boring. Core coming in is the only change I would make. I'd keep exactly the same starting 11. I think you're right in terms of making changes for fresh legs and stuff, but they've had 10 days off. Do you know what I mean? I think playing a game on the Tuesday night, coming in today for a bit of recovery, and they've got a couple of days for some light training. They're not going to be training hard anyway. Bit of light training, and then they go again on Friday. I wouldn't change anything. I think Easton and Mullen, I would like to have in. I don't think they're fit. Certainly not fit enough to start. So I'd keep Connolly in there, and I agree. Turner, I thought was excellent. Exactly the player we were hoping to get, and what a time to be getting him. So just got to keep plodding on the way we did. Byrne was just Rolls Royce stuff on Tuesday night. So Brown, energy, Stanton, shutting everything down, and Vaughan's just there to. And actually, do you know something? We're talking about Zach Rudden before, but Vaughan's actually better at holding the ball up. But he's also better at challenging the centre halves for headers. He seems to actually win.
Not the way
he wins more.
He was constantly giving away fouls on last night.
Aye, but it's
poor wee Aaron Muirhead having to be looked after by the referee.
But that's the thing. Vaughan does it all the time. Waits for the defender to set his feet and then just bumps him. And sometimes he gets away with it and sometimes he doesn't. But at the very least, that centre half never gets a free header. Never. Do you know what I mean? I love that about Vaughan. So yeah, I'd keep pretty much exactly the same team.
It's going to be very intriguing to see just how many changes Partick Thistle make, and like to what extent they do, because they just, as I say, they're in that position where they've got we talked about loads, a really strong starting 11, and I say barring a couple of positions, it's real drop-offs. But you reach a point where, a half-fit Jack McMillan, is he really a better option than, this kid who's 18 but has at least, got a set of lungs on him? Like, so it'll be interesting to see. I suspect they won't make many changes. Yes. Just the way Chris Dillon strikes me as a manager, I think he's just going to ask them to go to the trenches for him again. And I think they will. But that's so difficult. Like, obviously, between these two games, you've got the same recovery. But when they're already shattered, that's going to be so difficult for them to come into. It will. It'll be very interesting to see how they line up, what kind of changes they make, and how they can kind of formulate a game plan out of it. Because I'm not convinced they can replicate that last 10 minutes from the start of a game. I don't know. I don't see why not, I suppose. But, they were just... They couldn't have done it in the first half of that game. See the way that we were talking about, like Scott Brown shutting them down, Vaughan's everywhere, Turner's everywhere. It was only into the second half where the Rovers had slowed down, that O'Reilly was getting space in particular to start knocking the ball long. I'm just not convinced they get a chance to do that again first half. And I think the first goal is going to be key. But I said it before the first game, I'm very confident. I'm very kind of comfortable with this Rovers side. I think they're very, very good. The other circumstances around it, with how tired Thistle are and all that kind of stuff, helps. But I just think watching that game last night, my overwhelming thought was one of these teams is better than the other.
Yeah.
And, we've played them 5 times this season. We've won 3 and we've drawn 2. So you get people who say, law of averages and all this kind of stuff, which I don't think makes any sense, because the average result there would be 2 points to the Rovers or something, which doesn't make any sense. But oh, you're due one and all this kind of stuff. Well, we saw how that worked out for Alex Jakubiak. I think you've got a body of evidence there to say that if you bring these two teams together 100 times, the Rovers will win more often than not.
Mm-hmm.
So, listen, we've seen enough freak things and folk falling over and creating assists with their eyes shut, sat on the backside and all this stuff, that anything can happen. But just in terms of pure confidence, I'm very confident, very comfortable kind of going into this one. You can give me a score prediction if you like, but just more generally than that, Scott, how are you feeling going into this? Where's your kind of confidence levels?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of a score prediction, I can see both teams scoring again. Just that it's the two sort of teams that they both like to attack. So even with Partick, obviously we've been harping on it. They are tired, but if they were to get the first goal, then obviously that gives them that little bit of life that they need. But I'm going to say that I just think just the sort of squad depth and everything all put together, I think that we'll have enough to come through. And I'm going to say that it'll probably be 3-1 us, but I think it'll be 2-1 and then we score quite late on just to really kill off any hope for them. But I'll say 3-1 Rovers. And obviously, yeah, with that, I do think I'm confident the fact we've won the away leg, it's only 50% of the job done, but I think psychologically it's a big thing for us to have gone there and asserted already our dominance in this tie. And I think the fact that Partick were going, well, this is the playoffs. Yes, we've not beat you this season, but anything happens in the playoffs, and they still didn't beat us. I still think that that might be tough for them to overcome as well. But yeah, so I think we'll have just enough to get through it.
I would certainly be happy with a 3-1. Blair, what about you? How are you feeling about this one?
It's one of these. I really don't know. I feel like I don't see us losing. I think that's the one thing that makes me feel confident. I genuinely don't see us losing the game. But I think if they do score at any point, I think it's going to be a score draw. So I think we either win 2-0, so 1-0 or 2-0, or it's a score draw. But I definitely don't see us losing it. But I'll go 2-2. 2-2. I think it'll be one of these kind of games where, I think it'll ebb and flow a little bit more than we're comfortable with.
I'm gonna commit to a 2-0, but I think, and I hope, two relatively early goals, and then just a bit of a non-event. Be delighted with a non-event. Second half would be smashing. All right, perfect. Well, listen, Scott, I'm sorry you went to the bother of preparing should McStay or should Dar go, but I'm going to say that it's 10 o'clock at night and we've been recording for an hour and 20 odd minutes. So I'm going to ask you to put that back on the shelf. We'll bring it back out next time, and I'm going to call it there. Cause it's also
it was Eddie Malone, wasn't
it? With Blair being on, it certainly wasn't.
Let me quick, guys. Just like 2 clues. It's like it's a goalie. His surname was McGurn. Like, right, bro. Right, that will do us for tonight, though. So thank you, everyone, for listening. If you haven't done already, and listen, why would you not have done? Make sure you get yourself a ticket for Friday if you possibly can do. Biggest game of the season so far, by a fair mile. We will be back, of course, at some point over the weekend for a thorough debrief. And listen, if that means we need to do another hour and 25 minutes to get another preview in, I will happily do it. So, thank you again, and we will see you soon. Goodbye.